Okay, so today we are diving headfirst into, well, a really messy intersection of divorce, betrayal, and
Mm.
murder. Forget your standard courtroom drama. We're looking at a story where survival instincts get twisted and some basically weaponizes the justice system itself.
Yeah, we've done a deep dive into Geneva Rose's thriller, The Perfect Divorce. It's the follow-up to The Perfect Marriage, and it really digs into vengeance, manipulation, the whole legal side of things. We looked at summaries, character breakdowns, and wow, some very strong reader reactions. It helps frame the story as like, where does understandable betrayal tip over into something huge, something calculated and criminal?
That's a really interesting way to put it. So our mission today, we want to unpack this complicated, twisty plot. We need to analyze these characters who are operating way out in the moral gray zone. And crucially, figure out why that ending, that big reveal, got readers so fired up, so divided. We're really looking for those moments, the ones that show how a victim, maybe,
Yeah.
becomes the architect of pure chaos. Okay, let's get into it. It all kicks off with a murder, right? The death of Kelly Summers. Where exactly was her body found?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
She was discovered in a house, and this house belonged to Adam Morgan. That's Sarah Morgan's late first husband. Now, Adam was actually convicted for her murder, but the thing is, he never stopped denying it. He claimed they had drinks, consensual sex, he woke up, she was asleep. He says he just left her there alive and was totally shocked later to find out she was dead.
right. And Adam didn't just say, I didn't do it. He had this sort of partial defense, didn't he? Something about the circumstance.
Yes, exactly. And that's the detail that kind of kept his story alive. Traces of GHB, the date rape drug, were found in Kelly's system, so suggestion she was drugged. But Adam's own talk screen, clean, nothing. So he used that. He kept saying they were both drugged, that he was set up. Didn't really hold up in court. His reputation was shaky anyway, but it planted doubt. And the fact that Sarah, his ex-wife, initially believed him, stood by him, it really says a lot about Adam's manipulative abilities.
Okay, so Sarah's dealing with her first husband's murder conviction.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, her current life is just imploding. She's divorcing her second husband, Bob Miller.
Exactly. The pressure on her is just immense. Bob cheated. That's why the divorce started. But now he's desperate, wants to reconcile, or maybe more importantly, get full custody of their daughter, Summer. And that custody fight, that becomes the absolute engine for everything Sarah does next. Every move, every twist, it all comes back to keeping Summer away from Bob.
And it's not just these two guys making her life hell. She's getting squeezed from, like, every possible direction. Everyone seems to be coming after her legally.
Oh, yeah. The sources lay out this incredible list of pressures, like she's helping out a former sheriff, Ryan Stevens. He killed someone in a DUI accident, needs legal help. Then there's family drama. Adam Morgan's mother, Eleanor, she's suing Sarah for defamation, claims Sarah didn't support Adam enough during the trial, so she's juggling a potential wrongful conviction appeal, a nasty divorce and custody fight, a DUI defense, and a defamation lawsuit. It's just relentless.
Wow, it sounds deliberately overwhelming, almost like mirroring her state of mind. Okay, let's focus on the men for a second. Bob Miller. His paranoia just ramps up immediately, right?
Yeah.
He thinks Sarah's playing puppet master with the media to ruin him.
And what's really fascinating is his paranoia, it's aimed at Sarah, sure, but it actually ends up revealing his own criminal side.
Yeah.
His fear makes him act erratically. That desperation is what leads to his downfall. Evidence connects him to something far worse than cheating the disappearance and abuse of Stacey Howard. Stacey's found chained up in a basement, abused. Bob's darkest secrets come out.
And even then, after they find Stacey, he's still blaming Sarah.
Yeah.
Still saying she set him up. That's just pure narcissism, isn't it?
Absolutely. Zero responsibility for what he did to Stacey Howard. He's completely stuck in this belief that Sarah orchestrated everything, planting evidence, manipulating the cops, all of it. He sees himself as the victim, even with Stacey chained in his basement. That delusion just seals his fate.
Okay, now contrast Bob with Adam Morgan, the original convicted killer. He's in prison, but he's still a factor.
Adam's still Adam. He's the same manipulative, totally unreliable narrator from the first book, The Perfect Marriage, still consumed by denial, fighting his conviction for Kelly Summers' murder. He's technically the focus of the original crime, but the story kind of pivots, right? It starts suggesting the real danger isn't the guy behind bars, but maybe the woman walking free.
And that leads us right to Sarah Morgan. Her arc is really the core of this deep dive. Starts as a victim, buried under legal battles, but she transforms. How do the sources talk about that shift?
Well, she goes from just being legally defensive to, well, actively malicious, you could say. Readers, critics, they call her a calculated survivor. Later, maybe an architect of chaos. Her number one goal, always, is protecting Summer. That's non-negotiable. But she seems to realize the legal system is flawed, slow, maybe bendable, and she becomes willing to manipulate things on this huge scale to get control.
And her personal life, like that relationship with Alejandro, just seems to add fuel to the fire, doesn't it? Highlights the pressure she's under.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the sense of chaos around her. It's unstable, volatile. It kind of mirrors her own mental state, which is clearly fracturing. The sources even point out this shocking moment where he actually pulls a gun on her. It just shows the kind of dangerous power dynamic she's constantly navigating. Even while she's mastering this complex legal game, her personal world is just exploding.
Okay, here's where things get really interesting. We need to dive into the deep end now, the moral ambiguity. The climax reveals what Sarah really did. Let's break down how she orchestrated everything. What specifics turned her into the mastermind?
Right, this is the big confirmation. Sarah wasn't just reacting, she was deeply involved in pulling the strings right down to how Bob Miller met his end. This isn't just winning custody anymore, this is elimination. The sources suggest really careful manipulation of that whole final investigation. We're talking possibly staging a murder scene, maybe framing Bob for things he didn't do related to that, and a huge one, faking Carissa's death.
Whoa, faking a death. That's way beyond just bending legal rules. How did she connect all that to Bob's downfall with Stacey Howard?
That's probably the most chilling part. She apparently used a GPS tracker, planted it somehow, and used it to lead Bob right to where Stacey Howard was being held captive. The implication is just bone-chilling. She set him up, either hoping the police would catch him red-handed, or maybe something darker. Maybe hoping Stacey or the police arriving would react violently towards him. It was a setup designed for his destruction, violent end, or at least total legal ruin. She used his own horrific crimes against him.
So the core theme becomes this really heavy exploration of moral ambiguity, survival at any cost.
Yeah.
Really pushes the reader, asks you, do the ends justify the means if the end is protecting your child?
Exactly. Sarah decides that society's rules, legal codes, morals, they just don't apply when her daughter's future is on the line. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, yeah, it raises huge questions about justice, personal accountability. Because despite everything she did, the manipulation, setting up a death, framing someone, the story ends with her totally fine, unpunished.
And not just unpunished, she gets public validation. That feels like the ultimate power play.
Absolutely. The ending shows her on TV, calm, articulate, explaining Adam's wrongful conviction. In doing that, she cements her image as the survivor, the one who overcame everything. She literally gets to rewrite her own story in public, erasing any hint of her own darkness.
Which leads us perfectly into how the audience reacted. Okay, so the book. Generally liked as a thriller, especially after The Perfect Marriage. Fast-paced. But the predictability of Sarah being the villain and the fact she gets away clean, that really, really hit a nerve with people.
Oh, the reaction to Sarah was intense, really negative. Our sources are full of just visceral responses, people calling her a terrible person, a crazy bitch. It wasn't just, boo the villain. It was real disappointment that she faced zero comeuppance. And the kicker, the fact she got that huge wrongful death payout, actually profiting from the chaos she created, that felt like an insult.
So it wasn't just that the villain won. It was that the villain won, faced no consequences, and ended up rich.
Precisely. It kind of undermines the whole idea of accountability, doesn't it? When the bad guy ends up wealthy, free, and telling her triumphant story on TV, it feels like narrative justice just went out the window. And that's often key in thrillers.
And beyond the moral outrage, the plot itself, being so complex, had some weaknesses, some plot holes that didn't quite add up for readers once everything was revealed.
Yeah, this is where the deep dive really helps clarify things. Let's talk about the first one. Bob Miller's alibi for the original murder, Kelly Summers. Report said he was out of state then. Solid alibi. Yet later, the police are somehow trying to pin that murder on him, too. Readers were like, wait, how did that alibi just disappear?
Right. And then the Stacey Howard abduction, the crime he was caught for. How did Sarah frame him for that if the police were supposedly watching him already, tailing him?
That's the tricky part, isn't it? If cops suspected him enough to watch him, how does Sarah pull off this complicated framing, planting the tracker, setting up the basement discovery without them noticing her involvement or realizing they were being played? It makes Sarah's plan seem maybe a bit too convenient, like the police procedural side wasn't quite tight enough.
And finally, that side plot about who killed the former sheriff, Ryan Stevens, felt a bit tacked on.
Yeah, the reveal that Kelly Summers' husband killed Ryan Stevens. It was meant as another twist, showing ripples from the first murder. but a lot of readers felt it was kind of obvious. And it didn't really tie back to Sarah's main story of manipulation, just felt like a quick way to wrap up that loose end.
But despite those critiques, the author did leave a pretty big door open for Sarah's story to continue, right?
Yes, that's the crucial escape hatch, narratively speaking. In the acknowledgments, the author explicitly says Sarah Morgan's story isn't over yet. So the idea of a third book, it gives a reason for why Sarah gets away with everything in this book. It suggests the reckoning is just delayed, not canceled.
So, wrapping this up, what does it all mean? We've learned the perfect divorce isn't really about solving a crime in the traditional sense. It's more about the psychological warfare between these two incredibly flawed, manipulative people. It's a deep dive into revenge, control, and how far someone might go, losing their integrity completely along the way.
Ultimately, yeah, the book really challenges your beliefs about how justice works or doesn't work, about personal morality versus raw power. It argues that for Sarah, survival didn't cost her suffering or needing redemption. The cost was just executing a perfect crime, one that left her free, secure, and in control.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If Sarah Morgan, this ultimate survivor, faced zero consequences, actually profited, does real justice only exist outside the story? Maybe just in the hope that the author does write that third book, and she finally gets caught. That's the question that lingers, isn't it?